Welcome to Hidden Wisdom. Hidden wisdom exists to initiate truth seekers into the mysteries, gently guiding them toward a lived experience of the divine that awakens and transforms faith without dismantling family or community. This work is about faith renovation and expansion, learning how to inhabit your spiritual foundation more fully, allowing for depth, relationship, and wisdom to grow over time. I'm your host, Meghan Farner. Here we explore Christ-centered esotericism, spiritual discernment, embodied wisdom, and the path of initiation, so your faith can mature, deepen, and become more alive. If you're seeking more and wanting to grow with care and integrity, you are in the right place. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Hidden Wisdom. I'm your host, Meghan Farner. Super excited to be with you today. I am really stoked about this topic. Many of you who are studying the Old Testament right now, this should hopefully line up really perfectly with the things that you are reading this week as we dive into Jacob's ladder. What is it? Oh my goodness, what is it? And what an answer to that question could possibly exist. This is going to be exciting. So thank you all so much for joining. A couple of just announcements before we get going. Hopefully, if you've been with us for a while, you know that we have our app launching this month on March 24th, which is just a few weeks away. So excited about this. I wanted to share feedback from James, who is one of our beta testers. He said, I have felt so inspired as I have explored the Hidden Wisdom app and seen the concentrated set of resources available there. More than anything, I felt inspired to explore, be curious about, and deepen my own intention. I love that the app gives perspective on possible journeys and opens up my mind to these possibilities while at the same time leaving room for my personal communion with God to dictate. And that truly does capture the intention behind this app, is to give you so many resources, so many guides for your own spiritual journey, and above all else, pointing to your own direct connection to God for authority, for the things that you are learning. That is your most valuable resource. So if you haven't already, be sure to go to the link in our description, join the waitlist. You will also receive access to a video tour of the app when you join the waitlist. So you get to take a sneak peek inside right away. So be sure to do that. Also, once the app is live, we are going to be having another event. We've been doing these little gatherings lately that have been so fun. Registration is going to be in the app. So this is a little bit different than what we have done in the past, but we're going to be having a discussion on new beginnings and gathering and kind of matching up with the beginning of spring, which was the beginning of the year in ancient cultures. We'll do a meditation. It'll be really awesome. This will be free to those who are subscribed to the app. If you're not subscribed, that's okay. You can also join for $10. So trying to keep this very reasonable and affordable. Again, you will register in the app once it's available. One last thing, we are starting to gather more women in our Return to the Garden group, which is starting April 20th. If you are looking for a community, if you're wanting to understand how to apply the principles and consider yourself as Eve, to really develop your divine femininity in balance with your divine masculine, for yourself, for your partnership, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, this group is a fantastic resource. The women who participated last time, they are still really close-knit, and it's just a beautiful way to find community while also just developing this spiritual connection within yourself to the divine feminine. So you are welcome to go to the link in the description and sign up for a discovery call. This is a free 30-minute call with me. We'll just chat and I'll answer all your questions, and you'll know by the end of this if Return to the Garden is the right thing for you. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our presentation. So as I mentioned today, we're talking about the mystery of Jacob's ladder. And this mystery is so deep and rich, I cannot possibly speak to all the aspects of it. But I'm hopeful that I can give you some food for thought in the beginning, and hopefully some things that are also really practical and important for you as you contemplate this symbol. But what should be understood here right at the beginning is that Jacob's ladder is one of the most mysterious visions in Scripture. And as we'll talk about, the imagery, the symbolism of the ladder goes even further than just the biblical account that we have. In the Bible, we have, as we'll read, this image of a ladder connecting heaven to earth and angels ascending and descending and the Lord standing above it. But what I want to present is that the ladder is not about life after death. It's not about something that is inaccessible to us. Rather, it is about our awakening while we are in this life, while we are in the flesh. It is a blueprint for spiritual embodiment, the pattern of both descending into matter and also reascending and bringing this matter with us into a higher state of being. So I'm so excited to explore this. We'll also talk about how this is the process of overcoming the natural man and coming unto Christ, both Jesus and also the Christ that is in you. So this account is from Genesis 28, verses 10 through 17. This is from the New International Version, I believe, of the Bible. It reads, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a ladder or stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. And as we'll talk about, I think there's much more to what Jacob was proclaiming in that moment. So again, this imagery of a ladder to heaven, it is not unique to this account in the Bible. Rather, it was widely known in ancient cultures. And we can see shadows and symbols and parallels between this ladder in so many other cultures. We see it in China, India, Greece, Egypt, Persia. We see it in other spiritual traditions such as the Rosicrucians, alchemists, Kabbalists. Even the Buddhist mysterious cave of 7 parts has some imagery here. A lot of this imagery is reflected in the book of Revelation. In the Muslim tradition, we have Muhammad and the Rock Moriah. Even Homer's Odyssey has this. Another one that I love is Inanna, the goddess Inanna, and her descent into the underworld reflects this. And what needs to be said right here up front is to understand that this is a pattern, okay? And this is a pattern that is found so broadly, it deserves our attention. In the Doctrine and Covenants, you guys know one of my favorite scriptures is the Lord speaking, saying, I give a pattern in all things that you be not deceived. And so when we can see a pattern and see it applied so broadly with a lot of consistency about what it represented to the people, that's important. In my own studies, I have seen this pattern in the creation account, in astrology and astronomy, in the physical body itself, in the chakra system, in the anatomy of the greater soul body. I see it in Isaiah. If you guys know, I'm a big fan of Isaiah's ladder, as discussed by Abraham Gileadi. We see it in Gnostic cosmology, in music, in yogic philosophy, seriously, it's everywhere, you guys. So this is so important. A couple of things to know is that it's widely accepted that there are 7 rungs to this ladder. So we start to pay attention when we see the number 7, we can automatically start thinking about, is it related to this pattern? And most specifically, as you can see, this is related to the law of correspondence, this image and the purpose of the ladder. The law of correspondence is what Jesus pronounced in his famous prayer where he said, let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That is the law of correspondence, that everything that exists here on earth also exists in heaven. Another way of stating it is the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. as within, so without. So this ladder cannot be deduced down to something so simple because we see it at every level of truth. We can see it in the cosmos itself. We see it in the body. We can see it in a singular cell and in the life and evolution of the soul. And what's important about that is that we can look at any of these places and we will know the wholeness of the pattern. This is kind of related to the science of a holograph, where you have a holographic image, and if you were to deduce it down to a single particle, the particle itself contains the whole image. Every single particle does, right? And so it's this beautiful mosaic of truth that is being provided by us. The point in all of this is to say is that Jacob's ladder is not just a story. It's not just a dream. It is a pattern that is anatomical, it is psychological, and it is cosmic. So again, I can't possibly go into all of the layers of that, although I would like to. But today we are going to start to unpack, again, just the broader pattern, and then you can go and see how it exists in all of these places. Again, the idea is that Jacob's ladder is the pattern that is describing both the descension into matter and also the reascension of the soul back into the presence and, I would say, the dimension of God. This is not only symbolic, it is representing real esoteric metaphysical processes. And there are people who have unlocked this imagery and who have embodied it, who have experienced transformation. And as we'll see, this is key to experiencing. This is the process of overcoming the natural man and embodying your true identity as a divine being. It's meant to be done while we're alive. This isn't a parable about what happens after we die, right? This is about us becoming as Christ was, in that he embodied his true highest self in his lifetime, and we are invited to do the same. This is the process of atonement, wherein we are again reunited with God, our heavenly parents, with Christ, and also with the God that exists even beyond our imagination, the ineffable God that we can't understand, that the scriptures and Doctrine and Covenants specifically describes as spirit, word, truth, light, that is in and through all things. So abiding by this pattern is incredibly important. It is the key to salvation, resurrection, atonement, breaking the binding ties that constrict us here in mortality, overcoming all the evils, all the ills of this fallen sphere. If we were to conscientiously and intentionally engage with this process, then we would have Zion. We would have a new earth. So we're going to go through, actually, I'm going to go back just a second. We're going to go through each rung of this ladder. And what we need to understand is that each rung is corresponding first and foremost to a spiritual state of being. So again, this is an inward application. It has very little to do with what the external circumstances are that we might be experiencing. It has more to do with where am I at in my spiritual journey, in my spiritual evolution, and am I embodying what I know? So it's not just about intellectual knowledge. It's about bringing it into the body and making it embodied wisdom. As we go through this, you'll see how each rung has kind of a negative expression or like a shadow side to it. And it also has what it looks like when you have integrated it, when you have fully come into wholeness on this particular level. We'll also talk about what it looks like to ascend, like what it looks like to successfully complete this particular dimension of consciousness, and what it looks like to go further to ascend the ladder through integration of all these disparate pieces of ourself, right? Something that's important to know is that each level of the ladder, each rung, there is something that both needs to be released or overcome and something that needs to be reclaimed. This is something that I have been learning a little bit more of. If you've listened to some of my episodes that I did about the natural man and ego and how those are, synonymous, what that means. One thing that I found is that we focus so much on overcoming the natural man, but there's another half of the process, and that is to reclaim. So in overcoming the natural man, we have to let go of the things about us that we have believed to be true that are not. And we'll talk about what that looks like in just a moment. But we also need to be reclaiming the things that are true about us that we have isolated ourselves from. And so both of these things are kind of happening at the same time. Another thing that I want to share is when we go through each rung of the ladder, it's very likely that you don't feel like you can identify with only one rung. And that's okay. Remember, in the vision, he saw angels ascending and descending. And that's kind of what we're doing all the time. Remember that true spiritual growth is cyclical. It's not linear, right? So it's not probably going to look like, oh, I was at rung 1 and then I went to level 2 and 3 and I've just been going up, up, up. That's unlikely to be the case. More likely, you're going to see yourself going through different experiences, different seasons in your life that are focused on all of these different aspects. And each time, hopefully, we're improving. We're going up this spiral staircase where we are revisiting things again and again. But ideally, there is improvement as we are moving along. So just all of that is to say, don't feel bad if you feel like you don't belong to just one place. You probably shouldn't, right? Like our journey, our evolution, our development, we want it to be holistic. So it's good to see that you are working actually on multiple levels at a time. Now, please understand that what I'm sharing is a synthesis of patterns that I have found across many mystical traditions. This is certainly not the only lens. As I said, it would be impossible to deduce it down to just one thing. But what I am sharing has proven true to me, and particularly as I have studied it across scripture, across cosmologies, and as I've practiced this myself. Yeah, so just know that the characteristics of these rungs, I mean, there might be a little bit of variation depending on which iteration of the symbol you're looking at. But for the most part, I think that this captures things pretty well. So we're going to go through and we're going to discuss the ladder and each rung of the ladder in ascending order. But I believe that this pattern is chiastic. So what that means is, if you know a chiasm in the Hebrew language, you have, it's kind of like, what's a good way to describe it? It's kind of like a ladder. No, so you have all this content, and the center point is like a fold where both sides are coming together. And each point, as you are narrowing in on the middle from either side, they are matching up with each other and they are both driving to this center point. And so what that means is that truly this ladder can be approached from either end, and you're still going to come into a centered, grounded place in the middle. So there, it might not be super important if you're starting at rung 1 or rung 7. I think it depends on, again, which pattern you're looking at. Just know that your journey is unique to you. Even though this pattern exists, how you climb this ladder is going to be completely unique to you, which I think is such a beautiful thing about God. Okay, let's get to it. So rung number 1, this is where we are moving from shame to purification. And maybe just kind of suspend any definitions that you have for that just for a moment. We'll talk about what that means. But this is what I would define as the lowest level of consciousness, where we are really blind to our divine self. We're mostly in survival mode. And what I mean by that is that everything in our life, we're driven by fear. We're driven by the need to stay alive somehow, even to dehumanizing other people. And this is where you have people that are not just asleep, but that are truly, maybe we make bad decisions at this level because we are so ingrained in the density of this physical telestial space. This rung of the ladder is characterized by low vibrational feelings such as shame, guilt, apathy, rage, and lust. So, the important thing to know here is that those are the exact same things that are going to need to be released in order for us to ascend. So, we have to release the shame, the guilt, the apathy, judgment of others, also, as we'll talk about, and rage. Another way of saying that is we're going to have to start doing our healing work to address the root causes of these things, right? Because these behaviors are not just behaviors, they are always grounded in emotions, thoughts, and false beliefs on the subconscious level. And what we are reclaiming at this level, if we want to ascend, is first off a sense of basic morality. That sounds kind of silly to say, but even in the ancient mystery schools where they were teaching these kinds of patterns, where they were teaching soul ascension, before you really got to get into the good stuff, there was an evaluation period, both for you and for your teachers and instructors, where they wanted to see, do you first off have a sense of just common sense, which is relevant to the next one? And do you have a sense of basic morality? Because it is possible to have great power through this process without having released those things, that can be actually very dangerous to people, right? So we have to reclaim basic morality. This is 10 Commandments stuff, right? This is also, as mentioned on the slide, a space where we really delve into purification of both our external and our internal space. And this can be very body based, right? So, detoxification of the body, particularly. Interestingly, for me, before my spiritual journey really kicked off, before I had my spiritual awakening rebirth experience, the year previous to that, I was going through kind of a health awakening and I was changing the way that I approach health. I was changing the products that I was buying. I started making a lot of products myself, kind of moving away from some of the more modern forms of doing things towards more ancient and traditional ways of taking care of the body. And that ended up being, I didn't know at the time, right? I was just kind of going with what I felt led to do. But looking back, I saw that that was prerequisite for me to go through my spiritual awakening is I was detoxifying my body. And that is incredibly important. Again, the connection between our body and spirit is kind of the whole point of this journey. So that is rung number one. We are releasing shame, rage, lust, survival instinct, just being so caught up always in the telestiality of this world. And we are moving towards basic morality, purification, and physical cleansing as well of our internal physical body. Rung number two, this is where we move from intellectual pride to embodied wisdom. So the idea here is that we can know a lot of things. We can have a great intellectual understanding. But until we bring it into our physical reality, until we are changed to come into alignment with the things that we know, it really doesn't matter. This is where we have scriptures, such as in the Book of Mormon, where it says, when they are learned, they think they are wise. Usually we relate that to like people who go to college or something, but I don't think it's really that. I think that I've seen a lot of people, even people who learn something that I think is totally true, that they learn that and then they get stuck and they never really bring it into their physical reality in any bigger way than just knowing it intellectually. And they call that wisdom, but it's not, right? This is also scripturally referred to when the Lord says, the idea of always learning and never coming to a knowledge of the truth. See, that's another thing is that this can't just be about a materialistic form of learning. It can't just be telestial learning. We actually want to start moving into learning the higher things, learning the mysteries, learning the truth of reality that exists so far and beyond what we are perceiving with our five senses every day. So, those are some of the things that we need to release and reclaim. We have to release ignorance, and that ignorance births intolerance. So, looking at other people as less than, right? Or I'm better because I know more, even though I haven't really become more. And we have to release the materialistic focus of our learning. And we have to decide that our spiritual education is the thing that is actually most important to invest in. This is where we reclaim the idea of inquiring of the Lord. Inquiring of the Lord meaning I ask questions to God, and God is the one who is mentoring me. God is the one who is answering me. This was a big focus on why we've been doing podcasts and gatherings lately about meditation and contemplative prayer and conversing with the Lord through the veil through that modality, because that's where I love to go to ask questions to Jesus and to have him coach me, to have him teach me. And my questions tend to be of a more spiritual nature anyway, just because that's what I love. But that's the challenge of the second level, is to release some of the mental chatter, and rather bring truth into our body. This is very nervous system based as well. Okay. Rung number 3, this is where we are moving from attachment to emotional regulation. Attachment is a really profound concept. We are actually going to have an episode with Phil coming out. I don't know if it's going to be the one next week or the one in April. But either way, one of these 2 episodes we have with Phil, he goes deep into what attachment is. But for our purposes today, I'm going to define attachment as clinging to anything telestial because it's giving me a sense of identity. It's giving me a sense of purpose. It is very kind of materialistic in nature, although it doesn't have to be physical for us to be attached to it. We can be attached to our family name or our ideas that we have about the world and how things should work. And this rung is where we kind of need to confront that aspect and understand, why am I attached to these things? And Jesus really taught us to not be attached to things or people or positions, and instead to find our purpose and our identity by attaching, so to speak, to what is actually true, to the spiritual reality that supersedes this physical one. So this rung is where we are kind of wrestling with that attachment, with that materialism, with our desire for things. It is also where we can start to lean into developing more emotional maturity. So the emotional body is really tied in to this particular rung of the ladder. So we're starting to heal and fine tune and understanding some of our traumas and some of the things that we have attached to in this way. We are, in order to ascend past this level, we are working on releasing pride, which again, I would say is our false identity, and also hypocrisy, which is kind of this double-mindedness from the conflict that we all experience inside ourselves, the conflict between our natural self and our true divine self. Really starting to pay attention to, what is my motivation behind what am I doing? Am I coming at this from truth and from the part of me that exists outside of time and space, or am I coming at this from my fear, from my desire for control? Really learning to wrestle with those things and become more single-minded, right? To have our eyes single to the Most High God. On this level, we are working at reclaiming humility. And I want to redefine humility because I think we confuse it often with just like not thinking very highly of ourselves. And I would say that a truer definition of humility is to see both myself and others as we really are, which is as divine, that we are gods and goddesses incarnate. Developing that perspective and then acting like it, treating myself and treating others from that perspective. That is true humility. Oftentimes, that's going to look like treating myself and others way better than I typically do, right? This is also where we reclaim this idea of honor. And I love the Aramaic for honor. We're going to read something here in a little bit. But the Aramaic for honor means preciousness, your glory, your majesty, your splendor. This is where we are reclaiming all the truth and all of the beautiful light that is inherent to you as an incredible, eternal being, that you have so much worth. You are amazing. You are beyond imagination right now. It's beginning to see that and to claim it and to act like it. Again, healing the emotional body, really key in this process. Okay, rung number 4. This is the middle of the chiasm, you guys. So no matter what system or where I'm looking at the iterations of Jacob's ladder, whenever I get to rung number 4, it's consistent across the board. Like there's not a little bit of finagling that I have to do. This is the middle of the chiasm. This is maybe one of the most important aspects of our spiritual journey. So rung number 4, middle of the chiasm, it has ties to the imagery of the sun. So this has to do with how you show up in the world, how you shine, how you're interacting with other people. And this is also the seat of like that full natural self, that false identity, our ego. And interestingly, that can manifest in a couple of different ways. We might have an overinflated ego, which is more of the pride and the my ideas are right and you're doing it wrong and kind of that aspect of ego. It's also possible, and I think women tend to especially experience it in this way, where maybe we have a really underinflated sense of ego that's like, actually, I'm the worst and I'm never good enough and I try to be perfect and I can't and blah blah blah, right? So both aspects of that self of that kind of sit here in this rung. And as we've talked about in other episodes, I don't want to paint this picture that the natural self is evil and that it needs to just boop, like go away, right? That's not the case. Rather, it just needs to be put in proper order with what is most true. It's a sequencing order. It's a sequencing problem where we tend to lead with our natural self and then maybe our divine self maybe like gets a little bit of say later on in just the circumstances we're facing. What we want to do is we want to flip that, where actually I lead from my most true divine self of I know who I am as an eternal being, as a piece of God. And then I let that inform my day to day. I let that inform the things that I've got to take care of business during the day, during this celestial life. In order to ascend from this rung, you have to release fear. Fear is, I think, one of the most universal inhibitors of spiritual growth. Fear will keep you from even starting this process. If something inside you says, nope, not gonna work on that. I'm gonna stick to my checklists. And it's understandable. We've really been taught to fear in a lot of ways. And so this is a big hurdle. And I think it is one of the things that can truly lead to a spiritual awakening is when you start to release that fear and step into alignment with God and being directed by God. This is the level where we reclaim our embodied strength and courage. So, one of the reasons that this is so important, I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of low vibrational emotions that are existing in the lower rungs. And this level is so significant because in order to get kind of out of those low emotions, you can think of, again, the shame, guilt, apathy, lust, fear, rage, pride. The next one that you go to, even before you go to neutrality and just like being able to hold space without a lot of emotions, um, where you have to get to first is courage. And specifically, I believe it's the courage to be honest, most especially to be honest with yourself, the courage that you need to look at your inner world and take accountability for it and actually begin and do this work. It takes an incredible amount of courage to get to that place, to release the things that our ego has instilled in us to keep us small and to keep us quote unquote safe, right? So this is a huge piece of the spiritual journey. I think that's why it's the middle of the chiasm, is that this is really where we start to come out of just the density of being human and the struggle and start to step into more strength. Okay. Rung number 5. So just because we're overcoming our fear and we're working on things, we're developing more strength, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have any problems, right? So there are still some things to be overcome. There are still more things to be stepped into. Rung number 5 has to do with aggression, conflict, fight mentality. It has to do with domination, taking action, and particularly sacrifice of other people. So, um, what's interesting about this is that I think a lot of these things particularly come up when we think we are in the right, when we do think that we're spiritually advancing. um, it might come out in that, well, now I feel this need to defend the faith. I feel the need to show other people why they're wrong. I feel this need to um, just to fight for what I believe, right? And unfortunately, I think that that is kind of the shadow aspect of this rung in some ways, because it's based more on judgment and control of other people. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not right to share truth or to fight against ignorance. I think that's totally aligned. In that we are preserving room for other people's truth, for other people's journey, for their agency. People, you might not like the idea of other people's truths. What I mean by that is that there is an objective truth. Part of the objective truth right now is that something might be true for me in my journey, meaning this is aligned for me in my journey, that might not be aligned for somebody else, right? So having a little bit more discernment and wisdom at this level, this is where we are reclaiming clarity and truth. So that comes with it, right? That as we are letting go of judgment and control, this need to fight other people, we are regaining clarity to be able to say, you know what? I know that God has led me to this. I know that this is right for me. I don't know that this is right for this other person. So I'm going to release judgment. I'm going to release the need to try and control and fight and convince or persuade other people. And I'm just going to love them. I'm going to love them. I will share my truth when I feel inspired to do that. I will do what I can to fight against the fear and death and ignorance and these different things, but I'm going to do it while preserving room for other people's truths. This is kind of the idea. I think Joseph Smith is a really good idea that he talked about how he would gladly fight and defend for everybody's ability to believe whatever they want to believe. Like, this is really the freedom of religion idea that comes into play here, that um, it's actually really okay for other people to have their own journey and to disagree with me. And I don't have to convince them. I don't have to try to control them. Like, I can just genuinely let them have their journey. It's a very freeing thing when you come into the more integrated aspect. Rung number 6. This one's interesting, and I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts on it. But the theme of this rung is to let go of reliance on external authority, particularly spiritual authority, and to regain your personal sovereignty. So this is the level of um, giving away our power and our agency to institutions, to experts, to leaders. I talked a little bit last time about my experience during COVID of like having to do, or not even having to do, but just coming to know that it's my responsibility to wrestle with things and that I can't, well, I can, but I won't, because I don't think it's best practice. I won't choose to just go along with what other people say or with what other people are doing. And my behavior might not change, but my intention behind it absolutely does. So this rung is challenging. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't listen to anyone, that we become rebellious or contrarian. It just means that my intention is to connect with God myself and to receive direction myself, because I understand, as we talked about with rung 5, that my direction is not the same as everybody else's direction. This is where we really step into, again, our personal power, our own spiritual authority and autonomy, and where we can start to develop gifts of healing, as well as gifts related to leadership and being a servant leader. Again, rung 6, we're releasing, outsourcing our authority to others, and we are reclaiming our personal spiritual authority and autonomy, as well as wisdom and discernment. This level really does invite us into discerning the spirits, as Joseph Smith said, and learning what is actually authentically the Most High God and what is not, what is an impersonation of that, what is a counterfeit. And in the process, we start to gain real power. We gain, again, the capacity to heal ourselves and heal others. Rung number 7, that perfect number where we are starting to experience integration, right? So this is the level of embodiment that my spiritual self and my physical self are collaborating and connecting and cohesive with each other. There's, again, an integration that's taking place. This is bringing heaven and earth together. So often we think of heaven and earth as like geographical places, and more it's about spiritual dimensions. The heaven being your true self, your divinity, and earth being this flesh, your body, bringing those two things together so that I am living my everyday life as my true divine self. That's what Jesus did. That's what this whole process, all the iterations of this ladder, no matter where you find them, it's inviting it into this piece, not overcoming and leaving the body, and also not waiting for the body to die and then be reclaimed by the spirit. It's about bringing the two together right now in this life. That is resurrection. This rung is achieved as we learn obedience to all the eternal laws that we we know that those are more important than just the temporal laws. This has ties to the idea of receiving eternal life, is that we are living these eternal laws. This rung is where we experience the light and the goodness of the spirit. And most especially, this is where we start to have joy when we can go through this whole process, releasing all of these things that don't serve us, reclaiming all of these things that are true about us, our power as divine souls made in the image and likeness of God, made from the same stuff as God. That is a fullness of joy. And then at the top of the ladder, we could say this is rung 8. I think that is significant. This is where we encounter Christ. 8 is really interesting as a number. Symbolically, it signifies a new beginning, the beginning of a new cycle. And so the idea is that the ladder keeps going, but it's going to go into a dimension that we can't see right now, that we can't experience in our current state right now. 888 is the geometric number for Christ, for Jesus. And so it's very significant that at the top of this ladder, what did Jacob see? He saw Christ. And that is where we see Christ too. The idea of receiving the second comforter or beholding Christ while in the flesh. Again, it comes after we have gone through all of this inner transformation. And I believe that we do see Jesus Christ. But what I have come to see alongside that is that we will, when we have gone through this whole process, when we have applied this whole pattern, been sanctified of all of these things and stepped into truth, we will see Christ in ourself. We will be able to look in the mirror and see Christ in our own eyes. This is the idea of receiving the countenance of Christ. Remember, Christ is a title. It means to be an anointed one. And Jesus, I don't think he would claim to be the only Christ, although his role was absolutely irreplaceable. I think that this is the idea of becoming like Christ. He wants us to make this journey. We will then come face to face with the truth of who he is, the truth of who we are, the truth of things as they really are. In ancient Egyptian culture, this is where they would do the weighing of the heart. So if you don't know that ritual or this symbolism that they had, is they would take your heart and they would weigh it against a feather. And it had to be lighter than the feather. And we can understand that if we've gone through this whole process of releasing all of these things that don't serve us, all of these egoic patterns, all of the generational things that we inherit, all of these negative emotions, the thought patterns that keep us limited, the false beliefs that we hold in our core so strongly. When we can let go of all of those, I think our heart will be lighter than a feather. Those who reach this level often feel compelled to go back and to mentor and to teach others and to share instruction with them. And I think that this also has ties to that imagery of the angels ascending and descending. Another translation of the word angels is messengers, right? So you have people who are making this journey and they are making it successfully, and they come back and they teach others. And I believe that those messengers exist in and out of the church, in every culture, every language, every tradition. There are people who have successfully made this journey who are there to help instruct us to also make it as well. One of the people that I just love and adore and feel so connected to is Mary Magdalene. And I want to share with you her ascent vision. And I invite you, as we are listening to this, to see that this was her ascent of the ladder, of Jacob's ladder, right? This is her version of it. To notice what she was releasing and what she was reclaiming at each step, and to ponder on what process must have existed for her in her life to be able to go through this successfully, to be challenged by negative entities, and to pass the test that there was nothing that they could claim. There was no way that they could claim her. As an aside, I believe that this vision is actually a really good representation of what was really meant when it talked about 7, quote, devils going out of Mary Magdalene. That's actually a really poor translation. Another way of saying that is that she had passed 7 spirits, or had maybe more modern languages, she had passed 7 angelic sentinels. And in that way, that she was a completion. She was wisdom embodied. She was her highest self in the flesh as well. And I believe that that is true. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is from the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, which is an apocryphal text. It is a telling of Christ's life from Mary Magdalene's perspective. You'll note that she is addressed in here as Magdala, and that word means tower. This was a title that Yeshua, Christ, gave to her, where he said, "You will be known as Magdala, the tower, because you are a tower unto me." And he said, "When everyone else deserts me, you will not desert me." And so that was the imagery that was given to Mary Magdalene. So again, go ahead and just enjoy this brief reading. See the pattern, see what stands out to you, see what you feel invited to know and experience from this beautiful text. At the end of that week, when all the disciples had gathered in the house at Bethany, the Magdala came to them and told them what she had seen and what Yeshua had said. But they were grieved and wept greatly, saying, "How shall we go on and preach the gospel of the kingdom of the Son of Humanity? If they did not spare him, how will they spare us?" Then the Magdala stood up, greeted them all, and raising her right hand, said to her brethren, "Only from the truth, I tell you, do not weep, and do not grieve or be irresolute, for his grace and that of the one who sent him will be entirely with you and will protect you. But rather let us praise his greatness, for he has prepared us and made us truly human." When the Magdala had said this, she turned their hearts to the good, and they began to discuss the words of Yeshua. Simon Kepha said to Magdala, "Sister, we know that he loved you more than any other woman. Tell us the words of the rabbi which you remember, which you know and understand, but we do not, nor have we heard them." The Magdala answered and said, "What is hidden from you, I will proclaim to you." And she began to speak to them the words that Yeshua had given her. "My master spoke thus to me. He said, 'Miriam, blessed are you who came into being before coming into being, and whose eyes are set upon the kingdom, who from the beginning has understood and followed my teachings. Only from the truth, I tell you, there is a great tree within you that does not change winter or summer, and its leaves do not fall. Whoever listens to my words and ascends to its crown will not taste death, but will know the truth of eternal life." Then he showed me a vision in which he saw a great tree that seemed to reach into the heavens. And as I saw these things, he said, "The roots of this tree are in the earth, which is your body. and the trunk extends upward through the 5 regions of humanity to the crown, which is the kingdom of the Spirit. There are 8 boughs upon this tree, and each bough bears its own fruit, which you must eat in all its fullness, as the fruit of the tree in the garden caused Adam and Hava to fall into darkness. So this fruit will grant you the light of the Spirit that is eternal life. Between each bough is a gate and a guardian who challenges the unworthy who try to pass. The leaves at the bottom of the tree are thick and plentiful, so no light penetrates to illuminate the way. But fear not, for I am the way and the light. And I tell you that as one ascends the tree, the leaves that block one from the light are fewer, so it is possible to see all more clearly. Those who seek to ascend must free themselves of the world. If you do not free yourself from the world, you will die in the darkness that is the root of the tree. But if you free yourself, you will rise and reach the light. That is the eternal life of the Spirit. And as he said these things, I felt my soul ascend, saw the first great bough that bears the fruit of love and compassion, the foundation of all things. And I knew that before you can eat of this fruit and gain its nourishment, you must be free of all judgment and wrath. When you have freed yourself of these burdens, you may eat of the fruit and so gain the love and compassion that will allow you to pass the first of 7 guardians. And I heard the voice of the Lord of wrath calling to me, but I denied him, and he had no part of me. So I saw my soul ascend again, and he showed me the second great bough weighed down with the fruit of wisdom and understanding. And I saw that before you can taste of its bounty, you must be free of all ignorance and intolerance. Only then can you eat of the fruit and so pass upward, unhindered, through the second of the 7 gates. And I heard the voice of ignorance call to me, but I knew him not. And so my soul did thus, unchallenged. Then my master showed me the third great bough, which bears the fruit of honor and humility. Only one free of all duplicity and arrogance may partake of its nourishment. And arrogance called to me, saying, "You are not worthy, go back." But my soul was deaf to him, and so moved onward and upward into increasing light. And then there came the 4th bough, blossoming with the fruit of strength and courage. And I heard him tell me that to eat of this fruit, you must have freed yourself from the weakness of the flesh and confronted and conquered the illusion of your fears. And the master of this world stood before me and claimed me as his own. But I denied him, and he had no part of me only. Then my master told me, when you have rejected the deceiver, can you pass through the hardest of all and attain the 5th bough and the fruit of clarity and truth. Only then will you know the clarity and truth of your own soul, and knowing yourself for the first time, understand that you are a child of the living Spirit. And as my soul moved upward, I realized that I could no longer hear the voice of the world, as I realized that I could no longer hear the voice of the world, as all had become as silence. Then in the light above, I saw the 6th bough, the one that bore the fruit of power and healing. My master told me that when you have truly eaten of the fruit of clarity and truth of yourself, then could you partake of the fruit of power and healing, the power to heal your own soul, and thereby make it ready to ascend to the 7th bough, where it will be filled by the fruits of light and goodness. And I saw my soul, now free of all darkness, ascend again to be filled with the light and goodness that is the Spirit. And I was filled with a fierce joy as my soul turned to fire and flew upwards in the flames from whence my master showed me the 8th and final bough upon which burned the fruit of the grace and beauty of the Spirit. And I felt my soul and all that I could see dissolve and vanish into a brilliant light and a likeness unto the sun. In the light, I beheld a woman of extraordinary beauty, clothed in garments of brilliant white. The figure extends its arms, and I felt my soul drawn into its embrace. And in that moment, I was freed from the world, and I realized that the fetter of forgetfulness was temporary. From now on, I shall rest through the course of the time of the age in silence. And then, from a great distance, I heard the voice of my master tell me, Miriam, whom I have called the Magdalene, now you have seen the all and have known the truth of yourself. The truth is, I am. Now you have become the completion of completions. I just love that telling so much, and I truly see this pattern everywhere. And because of that, I think it is so important for us to tune in and to learn it for ourselves. Again, there's so much more depth that we could go into. But for now, I'll just invite you to consider where you might be seeing this pattern. And one place that I assure you it exists is in you. This ladder is in you. It is in your anatomy, both your physical and spiritual. Revisiting Jacob, after his experience, he said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." And I want to suggest that this place was not on his journeys. It wasn't in the Middle East that he was speaking about, although he experienced it there, but that this place he is speaking of is in us, that we are the temple of God, that the kingdom of heaven is within us. We are the house of God, and the gate of heaven is right here. As we learn to have eyes to see these types and shadows, to interpret and apply these patterns in all of their depth and complexity and uniqueness to us, we can bring truth into the physical reality. We can overcome the natural man, becoming who we truly are. We can reestablish our connection to God. We can heal the world. This is the process. This is the way. I hope this was meaningful to you. I invite you to go and find this pattern. See where else it exists for you. And as you do so, you will be educated in a spiritual, I don't have a good word for it. This is a spiritual education that if you feel called to, it's because your soul is ready for it. So I'm so excited. May you seek and you will find. If this hidden wisdom resonates, it's because this path is meant for you. The Hidden Wisdom app is our primary gathering space for truth seekers who want their faith to awaken, transform, and expand within a steady and grounded container. Inside the app, you'll find pathway programs, libraries, community support, and daily invitations designed to help spiritual transformation unfold gradually, layer by layer, so that your faith remains rooted even as it grows. You'll find the app linked in the show notes. This is where your journey continues.